Actually, a lot of times, what I found with a lot of my guests is that they have gone through some sort of either trauma or struggle in the moment. When people have some sort of hardship that they're dealing with, it's very hard to see what the result is or what the outcome is. But as time goes on and as you start to create and pivot and curate how your life is designed, you end up seeing how some of those struggles and how some of that trauma can actually help catapult you to that next step.
I think it's a really important point to make. Look ahead and plan for now at the same time, which it sounds like you're doing really well. Do you think John Legend would make you a theme song? I feel like that'd be something I'd ask for.
Oh, that should totally be something that I asked for. Yeah, that'll be number one.
Welcome to Building Value. I'm Jason Nellis. Today, I'm interviewing Rachel Rhee, who is a business consultant, executive coach, and wellness advocate. Rachel hosts the podcast You Are Here, where she has conversations with people who take the road less traveled, both in their lives and in their careers. I had the pleasure of meeting Rachel more than 15 years ago when our paths crossed in Hulu's early days. And like me, Rachel is a survivor of cancer, having been diagnosed with kidney cancer more than 5 years ago and is successfully in remission. She was a generous guest who offered compelling thoughts on creating a community of fans, best practices for podcasting, and building a conversation flywheel for your audience. If you like what you hear, be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review. And here she is, Rachel Rhee. Welcome, Rachel Rhee. How are you today?
I am great. It's so good to see you, Jason.
Rachel, it's good to see you too. You know, we got to know each other. I dare call out the amount of time, but 15 years ago, I'm sorry for putting a number to it, when we were both wee little children. But you and I got to know each other some years ago when you were working for Joss Whedon, when he was launching Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog on Hulu, if anybody remembers that. You've come a long way since then. Do you mind giving just a quick history of sort of, you know, what you've been working on and sort of what is the current trajectory of your career?
Oh my goodness. Yes, it has been quite a while, but we're only 25, right? So we met very, very
Right.
young.
I just learned to
But
drive. This is a whole thing for me.
exactly. But no, I was a project manager for Dr. Horrible Sing Along blog, and it was such an interesting, cool time. I didn't necessarily realize in the moment how pivotal that was to streaming, to the quality of work, to online creation, all of that. So I feel very grateful to have been a part of that process. But since then, I've definitely taken a lot of different turns in my career. I have work experience in management consulting. So I was working for a consulting firm for a number of years. I've also worked at digital agencies. I've worked as a content creator as well, doing that full time and creating a lot of storytelling online. And I'm also now a podcaster as well. But I've taken lots of different pivots in my life, in my professional career. Also did a little stint in crypto as well. So, been around in many different industries, but I have felt that even though they've all been in separate industries and in different roles, they've all sort of built on top of each other. So everything that I've learned in previous roles, all the different skills and things that I was exposed to has helped me in the next venture that I've been a part of.
Tell me a little bit about how your early time at the beginnings of streaming, influenced how you think about the content creation you were doing professionally and now your podcast today. Because when I think about my early time at Hulu and I think about how I was really stuck very much in a network model, right? Until Dr. Horrible came along and other independent projects that we eventually sort of took on as a company, my thinking was still very much in the NBC Foxes of the universe. Does that kind of stuff still influence you, or do you hold on to maybe perhaps a little more of the early sort of Wild West of that time, and we're just trying to raise the bar and we're just seeing what works?
I think honestly, that's kind of how storytelling is, right? Like you sort of just see where you're at and try to iterate from there. Every week is a new process. And I know you and I were both very new to this podcasting venture as well. So every week, I don't know that there's necessarily a full long-term game plan, but we're just trying to iterate in upping our skills, whether it is in storytelling and hosting, in finding and curating guests, sharing interesting stories, and also the editing process as well that we talked about. So it's all very iterative from my perspective.
Tell me then a little bit about the podcast. What is your thesis? Who are you bringing on board?
Yeah, so my podcast is called You Are Here, and it's really about sharing stories from people who are taking unconventional or courageous paths in life. So that could be anyone who maybe perhaps had a full long term corporate career and then all of a sudden has decided to pivot and become a digital nomad and sell all their belongings and move across the world. So it could be anyone from that, or it could be, I had a guest on who found out that they had a brain tumor, and that changed the direction of her life. And she ended up creating a huge business in skincare that dealt that was directly correlated to all of the health concerns that she was experiencing. So there's a whole slew of different types of guests that I bring on, but ultimately what I would like the listener to take away from it is I have an overall mission of helping people lean into living a more fulfilling and more aligned life, whatever that means to them.
I love that. I think it's always important to have a strong ethos behind any creative project. And in particular, you know, I've always been advised when thinking about my own podcast, you have to have a niche, right? You have to have a thesis. It
Right.
has to be this very specific, driven business thing. Um, I want to recognize and appreciate that yours is perhaps a little bit more general, but what a wonderful sentiment. The idea of like unconventional paths that bring creative joy, right? It's not so much about how did I use this as a networking opportunity to become a slightly higher paid product manager, but instead it's, stories of inspiration, stories of, uh, I'm referencing an interview I did some time ago where my guest said that his dad used to say, everything looks like a pinball, right, in terms of your path as you're moving forward, and then when you look behind you, everything's a straight line. And I think Gordon Saft, yeah, so Gordon Saft was my guest who said that. But I think what I'm hearing from you is that that's what you're looking for out of your guests, right? Was there anything in their stories that really resonated for you in your own path? Something that you hadn't anticipated, that a challenge they'd taken on or a course that they'd taken that you found might apply to your own career direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually a lot of times what I found with a lot of my guests is that they have gone through some sort of either trauma or struggle when it comes to either their mental health or physical health. And I think that in the moment when people have some sort of hardship that they're dealing with, it's very hard to see what the result is or what the outcome is. You're so stuck in whatever mindset you're in or whatever you're struggling with. But as time goes on and as you start to create and pivot and curate how your life is designed, you end up seeing how some of those struggles and how some of that trauma can actually help catapult you to that next step. And so I think that's always just been an inspiring theme that I've seen in many of my guests, and it's definitely helped me in my life path as well. I'm someone who is a cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with kidney cancer, ultimately had to remove one of my kidneys through surgery. And so that, at the time didn't necessarily make sense to me of why that was happening to me. But ultimately, because of all of my health struggles and the things that have happened to me in the past, that's definitely helped me design the way in which I want to show up in the world, whether it comes to even just my own personal health and my own personal emotional, mental well being, but also how I want to inspire and help others as well.
Boy, that resonates for me. I mean, we've talked about this before. I am also a cancer survivor, 20 years now with Hodgkin's lymphoma when I was young. Um, it's such a one of the experiences I had that took me years to put a name to was this sort of ego death of the person who I was before I got sick and the person I've become after I was sick. Um, did you have a similar experience? Do you feel like there's the before person and the after person when it comes to your diagnosis?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say that prior to the diagnosis, I was already living a very healthy lifestyle. And so I think that was something that was really shocking for me. Like, hey, I thought I was doing all the right things. I was, exercising every day and, I was very mindful about what I was eating and so on and so forth. But actually, ultimately, one of the lessons that I learned is that, there's a lot of emotional trauma or things that maybe I haven't processed from when I was younger or as I was growing up that I feel like I didn't necessarily deal with. And so when you're diagnosed with cancer, you're kind of looking at your life in all sorts of different angles and different perspectives. And it really was the forcing function to get me to actually take a look at some of my past healing that I needed to do. And I think that helped me in more of a whole self holistic view in terms of how I'm taking care of myself. And it's not necessarily only just like the more one dimensional ways that I was looking at it from a health perspective.
It's also very different when you're, I was 19 when I was diagnosed, right? I was not
Mhm.
yet fully baked as an adult, right? You've had the opportunity to sort of assess an adulthood that optimized for health, optimized for that sort of longevity, and then this curveball comes. It doesn't necessarily, certainly, it throws you off, but it doesn't set you off course the way that it did, when you're 19 and figuring out who you want to be as an adult. I still remember. I don't know if you had this experience. Did you go through chemo and radiation?
No, no. So I was fortunate enough to where it was stage 2 and it hadn't metastasized into other areas. So it was isolated to my kidney. Yeah.
I should take a step back and say there's no good version of either of us getting sick, right? There's no version of this that is thumbs up. Okay, great, you got the nice version. But I'm glad to hear that you had an experience that not only gave you an opportunity to step back, but did not rock your world in that same way, right? Maybe helped you double down on the path you have now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel so grateful to have not had a longer journey with cancer, but I think there were certain things that I didn't necessarily expect because while I say, it was just the surgery that I had to do and I didn't have to do any chemo or radiation, there's still sort of that emotional aspect of because everything happened so quickly for myself, I didn't necessarily get the chance to process, deal, and heal through all of that until later. And so it was, months, years after that to where I feel like I finally was able to come to a place of peace with it.
Again, I certainly resonate with that. I think there's always that whiplash effect of any major diagnosis, of any major life experience that wasn't intended and wasn't planned for, where afterwards you sort of look in the mirror and go, wait, what the hell just happened? So
Right.
grateful that you did not have that same, that your whiplash did not come from basically liquid plumber going through your system. I don't recommend it. It was not. On the other hand, I got a nice head of hair out of it, so I can't complain too much. It did come back
That's great.
differently. But,
Always
you
looking
know,
at the positives. Yeah.
well, I'm not like Captain Athletic, right? I gotta latch on to the things about myself that do, there's the few positives I can point to.
One thing that I will say just about the cancer experience, though, is that I think me having been diagnosed with cancer, also me having this podcast where I enjoy sharing stories from people who are taking that courageous path in life to live a life that's more aligned. I think those two are very connected because once you're diagnosed with cancer, or whether it's, it could be a whole slew of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be cancer for everybody. But once you go through something that is very life altering, you start to then question what is life, or what do I want out of my life with this other opportunity that I have? How do I want to create my life? How do I want to design my life? And I think that's why it's so important to me because health problems can happen at any time. And, the more time that goes on, cancer is becoming more and more prevalent in our society. And so the more people that are affected, the more that we really need to question what is it that we really want out of life and how do we want to create that for ourselves. And so, that's why I'm so passionate about sharing these types of stories.
Yeah, not only that, and the reminding ourselves, both through the podcasting interview as well as the listening, to take a step back and do a holistic evaluation of how we're living our lives. If that opportunity hits even a couple of listeners, right, a couple of guests, get reminded, even if they're focused on it, that actually, we're talking about this now, and I really haven't assessed my alcohol intake or my exercise regimen or any, how many vitamins I'm taking. Any opportunity to remind ourselves and others that health is a holistic, systemic ecosystem that has to be addressed from many different angles and has to be constantly reassessed, I think can only benefit everyone. Tell me a little bit about let's get into the nitty gritty of the podcast itself, because this is
Yes,
the
let's
thing
do it.
I want to compare notes. I want you to tell me
Yeah.
what I'm doing wrong.
Oh my gosh.
But
No, you tell me
no,
what
no,
I'm
no, no.
doing wrong.
On the contrary, I promise to be gentle. Um, talk to me about sort of where and how you're finding guests. Are you doing blind outreach, or are they coming to you more frequently now?
So I have, at the time of this recording, I have about 34 episodes out. Some of those are mixed in with solo episodes for myself. But for the most part, I have actually done outreach to people that are within my network. So whether I've had, personal relationships with them, or maybe it's just through social media that we've exchanged a few DMs and I've always found their story to be very interesting. It's all been sort of organic within the people that I know. And now that, we're 30 some episodes deep, now I'm finding that I do need to do a little bit more outreach, do a little bit of research, listen in on other people's podcasts, or also just scrolling on social media with intention of, reading the captions, seeing what people really have to say, and seeing if they might be a good fit to be a podcast guest.
And are you using any video, or is it purely audio podcast?
I am doing video. It's all being recorded through Riverside, but I don't actually publish the full video version on YouTube or any other platform. I just use it as a function of creating shorter social clips to put on Instagram and some on YouTube Shorts.
And are you publishing on a consistent schedule? Like, are you finding yourself, every week on Monday, or is it more variable depending on the quality of guests you're able to sign up?
Well, my podcast is weekly, so it comes out every Thursday. And so I'm on a schedule for that. And that was twofold. So, one, because I want to create some consistency for my audience, but also, two, for me, giving myself that deadline of like, hey, you have this deadline, so you better get your act together and get a guest or get a solo episode out. So, it kind of puts me on a schedule as well, which is, it's very important, especially if you're doing this, and self producing on your own. It's so easy to kind of punt off deadlines if it's no one's accountable, or if you're not accountable to anyone except for yourself. So there's two functions to that, but the main being, I want people to know that every Thursday they're able to see or listen to an episode from me. So knowing that I need to get ahead of schedule, need to make sure that I'm recording. I basically record at any point that my guests are available. And so just getting at least a couple weeks ahead of schedule so that I don't run into an issue where I don't have an episode.
I appreciate that. I recognize how much work it takes to get out a weekly episode. For a little while with this podcast, I was trying it every other week just to give myself a little bit more space. And it was interesting to see the drop off in engagement, right? The listenership was, neither you nor I have multi-million-dollar podcasts, right? We're still sort of building a lot of momentum, which is okay. We still made it over the first cusp, which is, I think most podcasts fail after 10 episodes, I think is the number.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
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 Well,
No, we're
go
already,
us.
yeah, go team. But doing every other week for me, I found it was much harder to bring returning audience members back. I really had to pull teeth. And so moving it to a weekly schedule, and really my goal is to try to get it twice a week if I'm able to start spinning this up more consistently. It's hard, but it's worth the upside. I mean, I know you and I talked before, but you and I both hit the same wall of analytics, right? You are super frustrated with your lack of transparency from your podcasting platforms.
Yes. Yeah. It's more so just there's not a good aggregator for me. So I'm having to kind of manually piece things together on my own. So I look at Apple's analytics on the back end, and that's separate from Spotify, which is where I host everything. So it's all sort of like not necessarily in alignment. And also, they're measuring differently. I don't know how each one is measuring. I would love to know how people are finding the podcast. I'm not quite sure. There's a little bit of a black box there. So it's all sort of something that, you might have one piece of data from one source, you might have another from another source, and you kind of have to create the story for yourself with what you have.
Yeah, I use Podbean just because I got sucked into it when I got started, which does a nice job of aggregating because it also does the distribution. But
Yeah.
even its analytics are limited because everything is represented as a download, which isn't entirely true, right? You're streaming on
Right.
Spotify. That doesn't necessarily count. Um,
Right.
but the fact that we live in a time and place where podcasts have been around for, conservatively 10 years, more like 15 or 20, and nobody
Mhm.
has figured out how to insert into MP3 files like some sort of marker to talk about view through and to like give me a sense of how much people are actually watching and compare that to YouTube and where I post some of my stuff. It's very
Yeah.
frustrating. I don't know if you can tell. I'm getting worked up here. I
Yeah,
should slow down.
no, I hear you. I hear you. I'm on the same page.
The rage is bubbling. Yeah. Um, so with that, right, with the forgetting for a moment the frustration of the analytics in general,
Mhm.
with your consistency of schedule, have you found an uptick, or is it at the very least you're able to maintain a consistent audience? What does that look like for you at your current stage?
Yeah, there's definitely a consistent audience. So I don't necessarily see any sort of drop. I will see some spikes depending on the guest, especially if my guest is like an influencer or someone who already has a built name or brand. I definitely see an uptick there. But I would say that there's a baseline number that I have, and I don't necessarily drop from there, which is nice to know that I'm building some loyalty now.
That's good. I and this is not to cast shade on any of my previous guests, but there are times
Yeah.
where I find myself both frustrated that a guest who I thought would do well in terms of downloads or views does
Mm,
not perform as well as I thought it would. And then others when you're like, well, where did that spike come from? Um,
yeah.
with you have more episodes published than I do. Do you
Mhm.
see any sort of pattern there, or is it still that kind of wild west of just like, I don't know, man, sometimes this just works out weird?
It's a little bit of a Wild West situation because there have been a couple of different podcasts where I have had guests on who are just personal friends of mine or people that I know within my network, and they don't have any social following, literally don't have an Instagram profile open at all. And those have been some of my best guests. But I think it is also the nature of the topic. So, the one in particular that I'm thinking about that had to do with relationships and dating dynamics and that kind of a thing. So, I think that maybe there's just a natural curiosity that people have around that, or people are just really going through it with their relationships, whatever that might be. So, that one in particular was kind of an outlier for me because there wasn't any sort of social media presence. But the other ones I think do make sense because I have had influencers on who do convert into higher listenership. So, it's a little bit of a Wild West situation for some outlier situations, but for the most part, it sort of makes sense.
All right, I'm gonna offer something. You don't have to take me up on it, but
I love
if you have
free feedback.
oh well, I mean, my feedback. I was gonna say, I mean, I was gonna ask you for feedback, but no, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
having, I mean, having listened to your episodes, I will say I want to encourage everybody to go and start listening because I appreciate, you know, your perspective is specific in that you have, you know, really intentional questions. You've done the research for your interviews. There's no question that nobody's coming in blind, right? That none of this is what you talk about surprises earlier. You know what you're asking, which I really I want to acknowledge. I'm also really impressed with the way that you as a host weave the questions back and forth to create, you know, we talk about, you know, the look back looks like a straight line, right? You may not
Mhm.
experience it in the moment, but you look back and go, oh, the progression of questions here it wasn't just logical. It really weaved a story about, you know, how this person got here and where they're headed
Mhm.
next and all of that. I really appreciate that. Um, I don't know. Are you looking? Is there something about your process that you're frustrated by? Is there anything that you'd like to improve if you could put $10,000 towards it tomorrow?
You know what I would actually do is I would invest a lot more time, energy, and effort into creating more social clips. That is something that I think that I
Yes.
definitely struggle with. Yeah.
Yes.
So for each
Yeah.
podcast episode, I put out 1 to 2 different Instagram reels. Some of them I think are put up on YouTube Shorts as well, but for the most part, Instagram is kind of where I want to build up some of that brand authority. And so if I had the budget, I would definitely want to not just do 1 or 2 clips. I'd want to do 3, 4, 5 clips from each episode, make sure that it's scheduled out, and also distribute that to not just Instagram, but to YouTube, to TikTok, to, LinkedIn, to wherever made sense, and see what could happen from there.
I'm in agreement with you. I don't do nearly enough of that too. Here's my frustration, which I suspect you also experience, which every early stage, I think we're still at the nano influencer stage. I don't know who categorizes it, but I know we're not big enough yet. Um, I get super annoyed at having to experiment with so many different platforms, and that the amount of work I put into creating content does not seem to resonate with any specific audience on any specific platform. So I suppose logically one could do what you're doing, which is just pick a platform, right? This is where I want to build my audience. We just do Instagram when we don't have a lot of resources, but I worry that I miss out on so many other opportunities. So when I do create short form, I feel like I have to blast it out on TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube Shorts, Instagram, friends and family on Facebook, right? All these different spots. But then I feel like I'm just, scattershotting, and there's no real strategy behind it. Um, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and in particular, given your focus on Instagram, and that's where you're putting your efforts now. Did you try my approach before, and did it drive you here, or did you just do the opposite side of what I picked, and maybe you'll go the other direction?
Yeah, I kind of just started with Instagram because that felt like the most natural way for me to start because I do have a little bit of a following on Instagram. So I thought it might be easier to have people convert from my personal page, which is just my name, Rachel Rhee, to follow then my Instagram, which is You Are Here Community. So there has been a little bit of a shift, but I am noticing that it's actually not as easy to get people to follow and engage on this secondary account because I already actually post it on my personal page. So, you know, we're still experimenting here, but for me, that was just like the most natural way to go about it. Now, I will say the second phase of what I'm trying to do for my marketing and to increase viewership, listenership, all of that is to actually put an emphasis on YouTube, not necessarily to put the full video and full interview on YouTube, but maybe at least starting with some of those social clips because I do have some long form content on YouTube that is related to the podcast in terms of how to actually start a podcast. So at least I'm starting to gain a little bit of an audience over on YouTube that is familiar with me just having a podcast in general, and then we'll see where things go if it helps in terms of me actually creating the YouTube shorts for the audience over there.
I think that's a smart and well reasoned approach. I have been tempted as of late to also think about putting, because I do, these are long form videos. I put them up on YouTube, as we talked about before. I spend probably more time than I should editing these video files because this is the part I like. Um, but TikTok, now that TikTok allows you to upload up to 30 minutes at a time, I'm kind of tempted to just see if it does anything if I chunk out my episodes at 25 or 30-minute chunks just to see if anybody does any engagement. But I'm also sort of jaded, not because of the political situation around TikTok, but I just feel like TikTok is so over indexed on so many other fast, empty calorie viral things that putting up 30 minutes of a substantive podcast just isn't going to do anything.
Yeah, I haven't really seen too much long form on TikTok, and you're right. It's very quick. It's very, 30 seconds almost feels too long for there. So if you do have an interesting soundbite, it might be interesting to just experiment with that first. But I don't know. Everything is changing all the time, and you just never really know. I don't think it could necessarily hurt to put it on there. But let me know how that goes.
I, I appreciate it. I will. I'm just thinking back to the early days of, what used to be called web TV when we'd all get together at a meetup in Hollywood, and the biggest star of the night was Felicia Day. It was as if
Mhm.
an A-list celebrity was walking. Just seemed like simpler days. When the Guild was the big thing, or Charlie bit my finger, and now it's so much worse. It's so much
Yeah.
more work.
Yeah, there's so much work. There's so many different platforms, so many different formats. And when you're a solo entrepreneur, like, it's just kind of hard to be everywhere all at once. So that's why, really just trying to, at least for me, what's manageable for me. I'm very focused on, what can my energy actually create? And I think that if my energy is too scattered into all the different platforms, then I'm just going to be scattered. And it's really important for me to maintain some sense of peace and well being within my life. So that's why I'm sort of just focusing on Instagram and then potentially also on the YouTube. So.
Again, I think a well-reasoned approach. And really, let me take a step back and also say that I think you're absolutely right at the most concrete level, which is bite off only what you can chew, focus on only the things that you can control, and don't feel that you have to spread yourself too thin. I'm fortunate that the way that I make my shorts, I use AI. I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a cheat, and it doesn't take much energy to put it out into the world. Yeah. Do you use tool? I mean, what tools do you use aside from Riverside when you're building your content?
Yeah, I use Riverside. I use Descript as well. But I also am very familiar with Opus in creating those clips.
That's what I use.
But
Yeah.
yeah. So Opus is great. But even Riverside, they have magic clips now to where you just like click a button and it generates them for you. And it's not necessarily always perfect, and neither is it with Opus. But you can at least get a sense of like, okay, at least at this marker is where I should look, and then try to edit and cut from there.
Yeah, my only you're 100% right. The reason, and this is not meant to specifically push Riverside, although Riverside, if you want to sponsor both of us, we're happy to accept it. I find that I prefer to use Opus because what I'm doing is getting feedback from an AI on the finished product. With Magic Clips, often a lot of the clips I get include outtakes or things I wish I could edit out more easily. And although the editor is there, it doesn't feel as clean. So for me, part of the frustration is that I want to be able to just use one system. It would be much easier if all I could, if, as I'm pulling files on one thing, I'm outputting stuff on another. But it just feels incomplete when I do it on Riverside. And that just might be also reflective of my own process.
Yeah,
We don't
and
all have to be as crazy as me.
well, and also, the AI and all that stuff is probably changing on the back end all the time. So I'm sure it'll just get better and better over time.
I'm fully convinced and I mean this genuinely, I'm fully convinced in a year to 2 years, we will be able to get essentially what feels like a genuine intelligence that acts as an executive assistant that will go find these things for us. Just the rate of acceleration right now it's crazy. Do you find are more of your conversations taken up by the AI tools question?
AI tools question. In what way do you mean?
So so much of what I've talked to creators and product builders about in the last year have just been how AI infiltrates everything, and
Uh,
not so much that it's going to take over jobs so much as what it can do to accelerate what we're already doing. So I guess I'm
yes.
curious in your space, given that you're more focused on journeys around health, journeys around bodies, and sort of self
Mhm.
care. Does AI come up as much?
I'm not necessarily sure just in terms of like the technological advancements of like how this affects our healthcare and all of that. But just as far as, me, I have a background in marketing. I've seen it just in terms of, how I create content, how I come up with ideas for copy. So I've seen it from like a marketing standpoint in terms of how it affects whether it's my workflow as a podcaster, but also as a marketer and the work that I do for some of the consulting clients that I have. So it's definitely something that's helpful. But I think that, to your point, it's not going to be until, a few years down the road to where it's like, the human is completely taken out of the picture. I don't think that, that is necessarily in the near term. I think that there's always still going to be this need for someone like me or someone like you or a human to kind of interface and to be able to use the AI for our specific needs.
See, and I think eventually I'm going to have a voice that's going to have a slight intelligence behind it, and it's going to be your voice and my voice interviewing each other for a podcast. I think it's going to be great. I can't wait to
you,
hear what terrible content comes out of that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you saw this clip. It went sort of viral a few weeks ago, but I believe it was the founder of Bumble. She was speaking at some sort of conference and she was saying how she was going to use AI for Bumble. And it was basically like, I don't want to misquote it, but it was something to the effect of having an AI dating concierge from one person speak to an AI dating concierge from another person. So then it was like the two AIs speaking to see if these two humans would be a good match. And so, it gets very convoluted and sort of Black Mirror esque. But
Yeah,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out.
that's a Doctor Who episode waiting to happen. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, that's funny. Are you all right? I got to ask because we started going down this road before. As a
Yeah.
fellow podcast host, is there anything you want to tell me I should be doing differently or better? I'm open to the feedback. The people want to know, how is Jason falling flat on his face? I think that's an
Oh
important
my
question to
gosh,
ask.
no. And no, no, no. I mean, I think that we sort of already talked about this aspect of it, but I think that with podcasting, it's just making sure that there is consistency so that your audience
Yeah.
knows when to expect you. So I think, especially if you have the intention of wanting to grow an audience. So I think that that's something that's really important. And then also, if you do have a smaller audience, how can you might not get the thousands of subscribers that you need right away to get a podcast sponsor, but what are some other ways that you can get people into your own personal brand funnel of what you want them to do ultimately in the end? So for me, I don't have like a huge listenership, but I do self-promotional little ads here and there. I always have like an intro where I'm speaking about something that's going on in my life or my business, and so I'll tell people, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter that goes out every week, or make sure to click on the link that's in the show notes to book time with me if you want a consulting call. So there's different ways to be able to um, grow your listenership in a more meaningful way. So it's not just the listeners, but it's like growing them in terms of their loyalty to you, growing them in terms of how they interact with you.
I love all of that. And you're absolutely right. One of the things I do fall flat on, joking aside, is that I don't do enough calls to action for any sort of flywheel, right? There's no newsletter I'm trying to drive people towards. I don't have a consulting, a service that I offer, so it wouldn't be necessarily that. But I'm with you that like there's nowhere in my podcast do I jump in for just a 30-second, in part just to also set the tone that eventually when there are advertisers, this is where an ad might go, is probably a good thing to set up in advance. I do appreciate what you're getting at there, which is that you do have to be thinking a little bit down the road, and you can use that as an opportunity to build more re-engagement. Sounds like it's worked really well for you, so I need to steal that advice, no question.
Yeah, no, and I think the thing that I really enjoy about that, and I do actually, my main call to action generally is, sign up for my weekly newsletter, because I do find that that's where you can actually cultivate relationships with people. When you have a podcast, you don't necessarily get that feedback or know who's listening on the other end. But when you're in a newsletter format and you kind of push people over to that platform, you can have so many different, open questions in your newsletter of like, hey, respond to this email if this resonates with you, or what did you think about this episode? And there are a few people that always write back to me, which is so nice, because it makes me feel like, okay, I'm not alone in this bubble that I've created for myself. There's actually people that are out there that are listening to what I'm creating and actually having it resonate with them.
Those notes are some of the most generous, kind things that I get, and they come so few and far between. If for no other reason than to get a little bit
Yeah.
more proactive, like, "Hey, man, you're doing great." Like sometimes an attaboy, sometimes an attagirl. That's all
Yeah.
we need. I'm with you. No,
Truly.
I appreciate. Yeah, I mean, but I also appreciate the. I think it's a really important point to make that I want to reflect back here of look ahead and plan for now at the same time, which it sounds like you're doing really well. Um, do you see this for you leading towards additional creative output, a book, some sort of longer form interview series, or perhaps maybe even just sort of seeing where, again, just letting it sort of naturally go where it goes and then taking the opportunities as you get the invitations?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely always open. And so there is an element of, I'm a curious person. I like to see where things unfold and see what happens naturally. So there is an element of that. But also ultimately, I do have consulting services, I do have coaching services where I help a lot of, mid to senior level people kind of figure out what their next step is in business and life, and whether they're on this sort of solo entrepreneur journey, creator journey, or anything else outside of that, how I can help them. And so ultimately, that is something that is more long term in terms of what does that look like in terms of my client base, and then really building out that book of business for myself.
Do you miss the world of media the way that you and I used to be in it? Because I'm not sure I do.
Oh, why? I'm curious. Why don't you?
Well, when I think back to my time at Hulu as an example, and don't get me wrong, I'm still in media, but being, at sort of the heart of streaming services and streaming content creation and all of that, it's hard work, and not just hard work. I mean, I was burned out by the time I was done with my, 4.5, almost 5 years at Hulu. Um, I I really relished that time when you and I got to know each other. I think it was 2010 we first got connected. The world seemed so much less um, challenging in the world of streaming. It just seemed like, I mean, we're just so early in it. There just seemed like there were so many new opportunities. And, the idea of like a YouTube original hadn't even come across our plates yet, right? The idea of a professional influencer who could live on the income from that content alone was just starting to percolate. And yet, I was going through 14-hour days, 6 days a week. You know what I mean? Like my days were just, I was burning the candle on many different ends. Um, so I imagine, you know, if you dropped me in a time machine back in that moment, I'd be immediately overwhelmed again. Um, I mean, it also helps too. Like, I'm older now. I move a little less, with a little less urgency. I might have had less tolerance for the crazy back then. Um, when you think about those times, do you have a similar kind of memory, or is yours perhaps a less insane flavor?
It's a less insane flavor, and I actually have
Okay.
the opposite feeling of I think it's crazier and more insane now than it was back
Hmm.
then. Because back then, yes, we had, I had the BlackBerry. So there was always, you were on Messenger and you did get messages and so on and so forth. But I think now, we have Slack, you're like constantly connected. There's also so many different forms of media now, and everything is moving at a much more rapid pace that I get a lot more overwhelmed now than I did back then. And I think back then too, there was also, of course, we were younger, I was younger. And so there was this element of like everything was brand new. And so everything was very exciting for me. Whereas now, after working for, a few years now, that a lot of things can feel a lot more overwhelming, more so now than before.
100%. I do agree with that. And the what's interesting is I don't, if memory serves, we did not have any sort of consistent messaging app at Hulu in its early days. Because, I was there 2008 to 2012, mid 2012. So that was before the prevalence of Slack and Teams. And, I think we were on, I think it was like Hipmunk or something. There was some messaging and nobody wanted to use it. But everybody had my phone number and everybody could call and text me. And my email, having that iPhone and Blackberry next to me at all times was, I mean, every now and again I get an email, I hear that sound, and I still have PTSD. Um, yeah, I think for me, part of the challenge is it was that level of crazy. Then I just don't know that it's changed for me. I think the format has changed. Right now, I hear the Slack notification and my brain turns to 11.
Yeah, totally. The PTSD for me comes from like Slack notifications. But yeah, no, I get that. But I was very fortunate where it was a crazy time back then. But I think that I was going into everything with such open, wide eyes that, I was just there to absorb, and I was okay with longer hours and so on. And so um, I look back at those times very fondly. Yeah.
That's I think a healthier approach than mine. So that's good. Um, if you could have anybody on your podcast, your ideal guest, do you have such a person in mind? And if so, what would you talk to them about?
I do have a dream guest.
Let's hear it.
And
Let's manifest
yeah.
this.
Well, I'll have to get a few more millions of downloads and listeners before I can book him. But I would love to interview John Legend. That is my like dream pie in the sky,
What a
blue sky thing.
great name. That is a great pull. I love that. What about him specifically? What would you talk to him about?
Yeah, well, I just think that first of all, he's an EGOT, so he has an Emmy, Golden Globe, Oscar, Tony. So that in itself is like makes him very unique. But it's more so actually prior to him getting famous and all of that, is that he used to be in management consulting back when he was, a barely adult. And so just taking, so obviously, he's a very successful, intelligent person. But going from that to then quitting, a very lucrative career to then like saying, hey, I'm going to become a musician and a singer. Obviously, he had the gift, but I'm very curious to like learn a little bit more about like what that transition was like, because I can imagine that was not easy.
what I know of John Legend, which I admit is not a ton, although I've certainly, heard his music at length, but he strikes me as somebody who is um, very focused on that sense of holistic happiness in his life, right? Like taking care of himself and taking care of his family, and that approach, which I think dovetails with the themes of your podcast beautifully. I think that's a great book. Let's make that happen. How do we do this? Who do we call? We
I
got to
know.
know
Yeah.
somebody at an
Yeah.
agency who can do this. Yeah,
It'll happen organically.
I believe it. I believe it
Yeah.
100%.
But yeah, I mean,
That's very
outside of
cool.
him, I would just love to just continue to have guests on who are just interesting, who are unafraid to go down a path that is not necessarily the norm. I even had a guest on where uh, she was doing freelance and she was a creator and so on and so forth. And then she decided, like, hey, I actually really miss the corporate life and I want to go back into corporate life. And I think that's a story that you don't necessarily always hear either. It's always like, oh, I quit my job to pursue my wildest dream. But she had the opposite path. And I think that's also very interesting and courageous of her to realize that for herself. And so it's really just talking to more or less the everyday person and hearing how they got to where they are and why that is an alignment for them in that stage of their lives.
Yeah, I find myself doubling back for a second because I've latched a little too much onto the health side of things. But you're right. If you think about sort of the um, unintended forward path and then doubling back into other directions, that's also a perfect match for what you talk about. I I get so focused on, as an aside, I get so focused on the idea that all podcasts have to have a niche, but yours really does sing in the space of, we talk about a lot of different things and that's okay. And I just want to compliment you on that because I think it's rare that a host can really nail that. And you absolutely have.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I definitely obviously know that there is importance in a niche and all of that. But for me, I'm like, this is a creative outlet for myself. It's a way for me to have interesting conversations. It's also a way for
Mm.
me to have self expression and have this be one more area where I can express my opinions, ideas, perspectives on things. And so I feel like I don't necessarily want to box myself in this area of creativity. So, who knows what can happen if you kind of leave things open, and maybe down the road I'll want to, become a little bit more specific. But for now, I am really enjoying just exploring the all the different angles.
Nice. Do you think John Legend would make you a theme song? I feel like that'd be something I'd ask for.
Oh, that should totally be something that I ask for. That will be like,
Yeah.
yeah, that'll be number one.
Yeah. Yeah. Something a little jazzy piano vibe, not no lyrics, just something sort of very
Exactly.
specific to you. I'm telling you, this
Exactly.
this this we're gonna make this happen. I don't know how yet.
Okay.
I don't have a plan
Okay.
specifically, but we're gonna, step one, think. Step two,
Okay.
step three, John Legend. I'm telling you.
Yes. Yeah, I'm with you. I co-sign that plan.
All right, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Um, well, Rachel, this has been delightful. Thank you for joining. I really, it is rare that I get to come and have somebody join who can take so many different perspectives, but also is so well grounded and so, directed
Thanks.
in their forward momentum. I really do appreciate you joining. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was so nice to just
Yeah,
reconnect after all these years.
same here. Before we go, where should
Yeah.
we point people towards? What is the best place for them to start diving into your content?
Yes. So you can go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and search for You Are Here. There are a couple different ones that are called You Are Here, but it's You Are Here with Rachel Rhee. And you can subscribe there to listen to the weekly podcast. And other than that, you can find me on Instagram, which is where I have a lot of my more personal content, but it's where I have an audience there. And that's just at Rachel Rhee. And you can also find the podcast on Instagram as well. That is linked in my bio.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I hope we have you back again soon. I really, not just the John Legend manifestation, but also, let's keep tabs on how your forward momentum is going. I think it'll be good to benchmark for both of us how that progress goes and how we can help each other out.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to come back on.